All right, good morning. How are we doing, huh? All right, good, fired up. We got a great panel for you today. Hey, my name is Colonel Matt Ingram. I'm the 4th Brigade Commander out at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. Some say the center of the universe. Cool. All right. Hey, I'll be moderating a panel today of former George C. Marshall winners. The officers who sit before you come from a variety of backgrounds and branches, and they have walked the ground that you are preparing to walk. Each of these officers bring a variety of experiences from across our Army, from combat arms, combat support, to combat service support, from the tactical to the strategic. They have operated in many areas, and it's a great opportunity for you to ask some great questions. So real quick, let me go ahead and do some introductions. We start at my far left, Major Melissa Brown. She's a logistics officer. She is a George C. Marshall winner from the class of 2003. She is currently a CGSC student here at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. Next to her is Major Brian Downs. He is a medical service officer, 2004 George C. Marshall winner, and currently a CGSC, Command General Staff College student here at Fort Leavenworth. We have Major Gerald Wynn, an infantry officer in 2005 George C. Marshall winner, currently a student as well here at CGSC. We have Colonel Mark Aitken, an armor officer, 1988 George C. Marshall winner, and he's the current G3 of the Combined Arms Center here at Fort Leavenworth. And we're also privileged to have Lieutenant Colonel retired Mr. Mark Wilcox, a military intelligence officer and foreign area officer. Currently, he's assistant professor with the Department of Joint Interagency and Multinational Operations. And he is a 1980 winner of the George C. Marshall. And then we have next to him Colonel retired Dr. Jack Kem, a military intelligence officer. You notice that we're kind of military intelligence heavy here. It's pretty cool. He is currently the supervising professor of the Department of Joint Interagency and Multinational Operations, and a 1979 winner of the George C. Marshall Award. So how this is going to go is I'm going to ask the panel members to discuss their commissioning source, the school, and talk a few minutes about their career. Then I'll follow up with 1 or 2 questions to kind of get the ball rolling, and then I'm going to turn it over to the field. You're going to have an opportunity to ask this panel of officers a variety of questions. And so I know you've been asking great questions for the past 3 days, and I have no doubt you'll not disappoint today. So at this point, let me turn it over to Major Melissa Brown, and I'll have you start first.
Well, good morning. I am currently a Texas Army National Guard soldier. I started on active duty, commissioned from Northern Michigan University. Any Wildcats, maybe? Okay. There we go. I got my commission as a quartermaster officer and did my first assignment on active duty in Korea. At that time, the war in Iraq was kicking off, and I think I was very fortunate to take that assignment and learn on my feet before learning in fire. I came back to Fort Carson, did more time as a platoon leader, XO, worked in the support operations office in a BCT, and decided while I was deployed that I didn't want to pack my bags for another deployment in 12 months. So I separated from active duty and went to Texas, where I joined the Army National Guard, and I've been in the Guard since 2007. I've done some civilian work. I'm currently a DA civilian in Texas, so I've got a pretty diverse experience working with the Army. I work with the Army Medical Department in San Antonio. I taught BOLIC for a long time, so it's been great to work and to train soldiers throughout my career, and that's something that I've really enjoyed in the first half of my career. I earned my master's degree through Baylor University in Healthcare and Business Administration, and took a tour out in the National Guard Bureau in DC before coming here and taking my assignment at CGSC. I hope to go back to Texas and take a role on division staff and work towards my promotion to lieutenant colonel. That's it.
All right. I'm Major Brian Downs. I graduated with a commissioned from ROTC in 2005. I went to The Ohio State University. I wasn't supposed to do that. So I am a Medical Service Corps officer. Specifically, my area of concentration is I am a medevac pilot. So upon completing OBC, I went to flight school at Fort Rucker and earned my wings as a Black Hawk pilot. Out of flight school, I went to Korea, where I did my section leader and platoon leader time. That was right as we were starting the surge in Afghanistan, so I managed to deploy out of Korea to Afghanistan for 8 months as a medevac section leader. Got to fly in RC South, Kandahar, and get my first combat experience. Came back to Korea, moved back to CONUS, went to Fort Bragg, went on another deployment as the brigade medical evacuation officer and a battle captain. So I managed the day-to-day battle and tracked medevac missions. Came back from that deployment, spent a year at Fort Bragg as a company executive officer for a medevac company, and there we were just primarily training and getting ready for the following deployment. Did the executive officer job 6 months downrange, helping to manage 5 medevac sites in RC East. Halfway through the deployment, I got pulled up to the battalion staff as an assistant S3. I was the senior captain on the staff, and so I managed all of the staff officers on the night shift. After that deployment, went back to home station, went to the aviation captain career course at Fort Rucker, Alabama. Got to hang out with a bunch of aviators again, explain medevac to them. And then from there, I went to Joint Base Lewis McChord, and that was a very interesting experience for me. Because instead of doing flying jobs like I had been most of my career, the first job I got there was I went to the 1st Corps staff, worked in the surgeon's office, and I was the medical evacuation planner for the Corps. Typically reserved for a lieutenant colonel. I just happened to be the only medevac pilot going there that could fill that position, and so I did that as a senior captain, which was a very challenging experience. And then after that, I got what was probably one of my most fun jobs. Everybody tells you that company command is the best job you'll ever have. I took company command at the hospital, Madigan Army Medical Center. That's one of the jobs I get to have as a Medical Service Corps officer. And so I was responsible for 600 personnel in my company, doctors, nurses, medics, all the way from E1 to 06. And that was a unique experience. The only other thing that I'll add is I am also an oddity in that I am a dual military couple. My wife is an 05 graduate of West Point, and she is also a medevac pilot. So we've had an interesting experience with deployments being separated, and I'd be willing to field any questions about that. I would probably be remiss to say she feel that the Corps has. Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning. See you guys awake. My name is Major Gerald Wynn. I'm a 2005 graduate of Morgan State University in Baltimore, Maryland. Got any Golden Bears in here? There you go. I'm an infantry officer. Upon commissioning 2005, just like everyone else, we attended our basic course, which you all should be looking forward to once you finish your school year down in Fort Benning, Georgia. After that, I was assigned my first duty station was at Fort Lewis, now Joint Base Lewis McChord, part of 4th Striker Brigade Combat Team out of 2nd Infantry Division. In that position, I was a platoon leader. Almost immediately upon getting on ground, and we deployed for our 15-month deployment to Iraq, which is definitely an interesting experience, and at that time, something I was looking forward to, but was a little bit anxious about. Wasn't pretty sure it's the same feeling as you guys are starting your military journeys. After that deployment, we came back, immediately went to the career course. Then I was assigned to a 3rd Brigade Combat Team out of the 101st Airborne Division, Rotc. 2 combat deployments with the Rotc. First as a brigade chief of operations, which for a junior lieutenant is very rare, and also as a battalion S4 for the battalion that I eventually command a company with. My second combat deployment, I was a company commander in charge of a very large area along the Afghanistan-Pakistan border. So not just worried about being an infantry officer, but also worried about at some points international relations. After that deployment was had the extreme honor and privilege to command a company in the 3rd United States Infantry Regiment, the Old Guard, stationed in Fort Myer, Virginia, and conducting memorial and ceremonial missions at Arlington National Cemetery, as well as contingency operation missions in the National Capital Region. So I kind of have a diverse, background as an infantry officer, from tactical to ceremonial, and I've been pretty much across the country. So if you have any questions about any of those bases, I'll be here to ask. I'll say it's an honor to be here talking to you cadets, because you are our future, and you're the future lieutenants. They'll supply the power that makes the Army go. So thank you for this opportunity.
Hey guys, morning. I am not going to talk about every assignment, because if I do, we'll be here all week, okay? I will tell you, I'm a 1989 graduate of St. Mary's University in San Antonio and ROTC commissioning source, but that was a long, long time ago. My military career started way before that. I am a naturalized United States citizen, so as I'm very fond of telling folks, is I wasn't born here, but I got here as quickly as I could. I'm from the United Kingdom, but grew up mostly in Africa. So when I got to the U.S., at the time I did not have citizenship, so as you all know, you have to have a citizenship to be a commissioned officer, which is what I had always wanted to be. So I took the opportunity to enlist, and I enlisted and served as a M60A3 tank crewman for about 3 years before receiving my citizenship and then going off to St. Mary's to get my commission. Since then, I've had the opportunity to lead soldiers in combat in 3 conflicts, multiple deployments, and as I sit here today, it gives me the opportunity to reflect and look forward to seeing you in the ranks of lieutenants as we move into this next generation of soldiers. But it also gives me the opportunity to see some great friends and soldiers that I have served with throughout my career. And I will encourage you, the people sitting to your left and right are what make our jobs a profession. They are the people that you will rely on. They are the people that you will cry with. They're the people that you will laugh with. But more importantly, they are the people that you will serve our nation with. So it's a privilege and an honor to be here, and I look forward to talking to you about whatever you want to talk about. My job here is at Fort Leavenworth, as I am the operations officer. So that involves everything that is going on in our Army right now, from the beginning of gender integration for combat arms, which my personal opinion is about time, and I think it is going to be great for our Army. I am doing everything with the human dimension strategy. Every training base that we have within our Army, I have at least some impact and have an understanding of what's going on. So I look forward to your questions. So again, thanks for allowing me to speak today.
Good morning. All right, you're getting better. Good. Yeah, my name is Mark Wilcox. I was commissioned in 1980 through ROTC at Georgetown University. Hoyas? Hoya Sachs. All right, good to see you. I spent about half my career as a military intelligence officer, then the other half as a foreign area officer. I had the honor to wear the uniform for 25 years until retiring in 2005. My career trajectory has been a little different than the others, for better or for worse, depending on your perspective. I've spent very little time in the tactical Army and more time at a strategic level. My first assignment was with the 1st Cavalry Division at Fort Hood, Texas, in the G2 shop. From there, I then went into strategic counterintelligence jobs here in the United States and in the Republic of Panama. I had a command here at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, as a field grade officer with a counterintelligence company that had responsibility for a large chunk of the United States. I attended the Command General Staff College 1994 to 1995. When I finished that, I started my foreign area officer duties. I've served at the United States European Command in Stuttgart, Germany, working arms control issues in the J5 shop. From there, I went to a hugely difficult assignment. I spent 4 years in Vienna, Austria, working for the Joint Chiefs of Staff as a military advisor to a U.S. delegation to a multinational organization. And then following that, I came here while still in uniform to be an instructor at CGSC, and then again retired and stayed on to educate our future leaders. The Army's given me some very unique opportunities, not just in assignments, but in training and education as well. The Army sent me to language school twice, neither time for English. I had a pretty good grasp of that. But the first time was for Spanish before I went to Panama, and the second time for Russian as part of my foreign area officer duties. I also had training in Garmisch-Partenkirchen, Germany, what was then the U.S. Army Russian Institute, the School of Spies, as our Russian friends used to call it. And the Army also sent me to graduate school for my master's degree as part of my FAO training at the University of Kansas, to which I also have another tie. My daughter was commissioned out of the program in 2014 at KU. She's currently with the 10th Mountain Division. So what I found with the George C. Marshall Conference, and again, to echo Colonel Aiken's comments, this is a place where you're going to start meeting people that you will serve with for the rest of your careers, and it was certainly my case there. So take advantage of that while you're here. Get to know your colleagues, because you will see them again. And again, I'm very honored to be in front of you, and I look forward to your questions. Sir.
Okay. Well, good morning. I'll try to say that real fast, see if you keep up with me. So I will go over every one of my assignments, starting with 1974, and we will be here till next week, if that's all right. Yeah, so it's good. I joined the Army in 1974, and so I guess I'm the Vietnam-era veteran on the stage here, and was enlisted, and got out in 1977 as a sergeant, and then went into ROTC at Western Kentucky University. And then I was a Marshall Award winner in 1979. So when I went to VMI for the Marshall Award, it was the first time I'd ever been on an airplane. And it was a scary experience. And so I can remember that the Marshall Award gave me my first airplane ride. So in 1979, I was commissioned as an artillery officer. And then branch transferred to MI after about 4 years. And most of my assignments are unlike Mr. Wilcox's. Almost all of my assignments were tactical assignments. I did 5 assignments at Fort Bragg, jumping out of airplanes, and then I was assigned to Germany, and then assigned to Turkey twice. And I did go to language school to learn Turkish, and I was there as an Honest John rocket officer, which is an old artillery system that's been out for about 35 years. It's really old, like me. And so I retired in 1998. I had cancer, and so I retired early. And retired as a colonel, and so I was commissioned in '79, retired as a colonel in 1998, so I was doing fairly well. Commanded the 319th MI Battalion at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and then I went to get a PhD at North Carolina State University. I've been here as a faculty member since 2000, so I've been here about 16 years, with the exception of two short interludes, and that was I've spent about a year in Iraq in different modes, and I spent 2 years in Afghanistan as a deputy commander for CSTIC NTMA as a senior executive service, level 2. So I've served from private to 2-star level civilian, and I can tell you it's really important that you do take the opportunity, as everybody else has said, to learn to get to know people. When I was at the Marshall Award, the first day I got up, after I took an airplane ride, I went for a run. And so I got out and did a run, and there was this old guy that was out running, and I decided I'd go run with him. And so I ran with him. He said his name was Ed, and that's what I remembered. And so later on I discovered that was Ed Meyer, who was the Chief of Staff of the Army, that I'd gone running with. And I'd smoked him that morning, so it was kind of fun. But, it was kind of interesting to see all the people that I got to meet over the years. And, the '79 was just the second year of the Marshall Award. I think this is a great opportunity to get to know people and to stay in contact. And I assume you still get the books that Forrest Pogue wrote. Is that right?
They get the George
Forrest
C.
Pogue?
Marshall book, yes, sir.
Yeah, the Forrest Pogue book. I would tell you that you ought to study the life of George C. Marshall. It is absolutely phenomenal what he did and his legacy that still exists on the United States Army. And so this is the time I think you also ought to say, how do I take some of these great leaders and look at the qualities they have that I can do? And I would say that is an important lesson here. And ever since then, I have really closely followed what the Marshall Foundation does and the significance that George Marshall's had on the United States Army. It is astonishing, and you'll discover more as you start to read more and more about him. So on that note, thank you very much.
Cool, sir, thank you. Well, we'll start with the first question, kind of we'll start with maybe a little softball here, and we'll get a little harder as we go down. And sir, I'll start with you since you got to speak last. I'll let you speak first this time. Based on your experience as at the company command and then battalion command level, what are your basics of leadership that you've learned that you'd want to share with our lieutenants, or our future lieutenants?
Well, the basics of leadership, and kind of, I'll frame this in the way of what do I expect in an officer that comes in, and a lieutenant or a captain, a new officer comes in. And I expect that officer to, first of all, be physically fit. That's kind of a no-brainer. They should be physically fit. They should be emotionally stable. And that's really important, that to be emotionally stable, where they've got control of their emotions. And I think they should have a good dose of humility. And that humility means they don't know everything. And they need to then also to be stable in the other components of their life. So they need to be balanced. I think they need to have grappled with their spiritual dimension. I think they need to have grappled with how do they handle their finances. All those things are necessary requisites, because if those things aren't balanced and they're not stable, then it's going to be hard to lead troops. It's going to be hard to lead other people. And so that's probably the one thing, have a good balance in your life and be willing to learn and have that good dose of humility. How's that?
That sounds pretty good.
Yep.
Mr. Wilcox.
Something that I would certainly add to that is a good ethical foundation. I think as we've seen with some of the mistakes and the issues that more senior leaders have been having in the Army lately with ethics, you got to wonder, where did that come from? Is that just something that hit these people when they became colonels or generals? I don't know. Do they do that when you become a colonel? Make it non-ethical? They do. Okay. Well, never mind. No, that's not true. Is you got to think, where did this come from? And it's probably something that's a bit more deep-seated. So I would definitely add a good sense of values, and the ability to know right from wrong, to make those right decisions, even when it's very, very difficult.
Colonel Lincoln.
As you've sat through these panels and discussions over the past couple of days, every senior leader has gotten up and provided a lot of insights as to their perspective on leaders, and I appreciate all that I've heard today, and I fully concur. The one thing that I would encourage a new officer when they arrive at your unit is to be open-minded and have balance in their life. And I'll talk about the open-mindedness first. When each and every one of you have your own backgrounds in education and family values as to where you have come from. And now you are entering an organization that already has an established culture, already has an established set of values, a set of ethics. And you're coming with that foundation from your family, and you're now adapting to that organization and realizing that you need to be open-minded in how you are dealing with the soldiers that you are working with. And I sat in a little bit earlier on with the prior Command Sergeant Major's comments, and I fully concur with everything that he was saying, and that it is your job to understand and be able to adapt to the organization, but then you need to be able to frame it and put your own character and build that organization. And when I say balance, kind of the second thing is you will meet people throughout your career who struggle with that balance, that home life and that work life. And someone said something to me when I was a young captain, and which very, very, very long time ago, previous century, but in that you're in the Army for a finite amount of time, whether you're in for 3 years or you're in for 30 years. You're in the Army for a finite amount of time. And the people that stood next to you on the day that you were commissioned and take the oath as an officer are the people that you hope are standing next to you on the day of your retirement ceremony or on the day that you leave the service. So I encourage you to find balance in your life, both work and at home, so that those same people are standing there with you at both ceremonies. So, thank you.
Oh, well, I think for myself and the rest of the panel, we have probably going to tell you what we tell our lieutenants since we were company commanders a little bit, for me, a little less than a year ago. I had the honor of being a company commander for over 3 years, 2 different companies. So I'll give you my 4 basics, and I'll kind of hit on the 2 that I really talked to my lieutenants about. The first one is going to be taking care of your soldiers and yourself. Soldiers, that's a given. That's what we do as leaders. But also it means taking care of their families, which is something that, I did not understand when I first joined the Army. That, I might be taking care of their soldiers, but I'm really taking care of that family, because a soldier isn't anything without his family. And then also taking care of those soldiers means underwriting their mistakes and highlighting their successes. That's our job as leaders. Next will be continuing to learn your profession and your craft. Just because we have the honor to be professional military officers, it's a profession we continue to learn. So there shouldn't be a day that you don't learn something, not from your soldiers, your NCOs, your senior NCOs, your commander, or get into doctrine, which is our base. Next one is going to be try to get in front of problems and issues. Don't let an issue pass you. To me, talking to lieutenants, I usually tell them that you are going to deal with a lot of problems every single day, and you're going to have to prioritize those problems. Now, some problems are a little bit more important, but you don't want to let the little problems get past you, so they become big problems in your rear view that may be huge problems for someone else. So, as a leader, we have to have that delicate balance of, knowing our priorities. You get that from your commander, you get that from, what you plan to do with your soldiers, but also making sure we're paying attention to everything and not letting the things slip that become issues for us later. And then my favorite to tell lieutenants is make a plan, definitely make a plan, but plan for that plan to change. Because we are always going to be planners by nature to make sure that we offer the best for our soldiers. But we also have to realize that things will change on the ground. In the infantry, we'll say that no plan survives first contact. That has been true for me in my very limited number of years compared to members on the panel. But you have to have plan for when that change of plan happens. And that kind of dictates how well prepared you are and how established and comfortable you are as a leader. Don't just have one plan. Don't think that everything is going to go the way you want it to, because not only does the enemy get a vote, life gets a vote, the environment gets a vote. So always be ready to frago and move on to the next sequel branch you might have. But really, for those two, taking care of soldiers is paramount to me. Taking care of, also leaders taking care of themselves, because we will burn ourselves out, and then making sure that we're getting in front of those issues to be successful as a unit.
So I agree with everything everybody said, so I'm not going to repeat those. I've got three. The first, I think one of the most important skills for a leader is to be able to communicate. That's critical for success. Of that, I think active listening is the most important skill for a communicator. Practice your listening. And when you're communicating, as much as possible, do it in person or do it over the phone. That way you can have the face-to-face conversation, and you can work out in person, in real time, any of the details that so often lead to confusion and miscommunication. And I know it's really hard in the digital age with text messaging and emails, but to me, those two are follow-ups. You're either sending additional information, attachments, or things like that, or you're sending information that's not time-sensitive. If it's important or if it's time-sensitive, do it over the phone or in person, because that's the only way you're going to get an accurate response. The second thing I would say is set goals and pursue them with enthusiasm. You guys have the benefit right now as cadets. You're in a learning institution. You are still in the habit of learning. As you get out into the Army, you will be responsible. You will be the person most responsible for your self-development. So set goals physically, mentally, and professionally, and pursue those, because you will be responsible for your own self-development as well as those underneath you. And then the last thing I have is work hard, play hard, and have fun. To me, attitude is a choice. When you show up into work, when you step in front of a formation, you choose the attitude and demeanor with which you present yourselves to your formation. And that attitude is contagious. And it is important to know that. When you walk into an office, when you walk up to soldiers, the attitude that you set is what they will most likely follow. And if you are consistent with the attitude that you bring to work or PT every day, they will follow that. And so if it's positive, and that's me, I'm an optimistic person, I'm a positive person, that is the type of environment you create. If you have a soldier, an NCO, an officer that creates a negative work environment and they do it daily, your organization will reflect that too. So I choose to be optimistic and positive because to me, it has created a professional, productive, and fun work environment, and I encourage you to do the same. Be cognizant of the attitude that you bring to the office every day.
It's hard to follow all these great recommendations and add more to it. But I think that the biggest thing I would echo is that you're entering a profession. And remember that your reputation is all you have. So, maintain that integrity, learn your craft to become better. Not every day is going to be a win. It's about winning the war, not each battle. So I would venture to assume we've got some type A motivated, high-speed, enthusiastic individuals in this room, or your colleges would have sent someone else. So understand that not everyone else has that same energy. Everyone is in the military and serves their country for different reasons. So find the unifying themes amongst your soldiers and your peers and use it to improve the organization, because I don't know how many times I've run into people I went to college with, fellow cadets. I ran into someone who was at my George Marshall ceremony, former commanders, and in very different capacities. So you never know who's going to be your boss or when you're going to become someone else's boss. So don't lose sight of who you are and the position you're in to help everyone else around you. The Army's really not about you. It's about taking care of our country and serving something bigger than ourselves. And I think that probably is all I've got to add to it.
Oh, those are great comments. I appreciate that. Now I'm going to ratchet up a little bit here. So I think I'll start with Major Wynn. So you've been my first one in the hopper. Describe a situation, job or challenge, where you clearly were out of your comfort zone, and what actions did you take to be successful?
I will say that the most I've been out of my comfort zone when I was a platoon leader in Iraq, 2007. My company was a station of a company of 120 men, 20 personnel, excuse me. We're stationed in a village or town of 40,000. This is part of the surge, so we're spreading out from Baghdad, and my platoon is set to kind of secure this very large district and kind of partner, as it were, with the Iraqi government. Little did I know, being there, that there really was no government. So we went from being a rifle platoon leader, trained to close with and destroy the enemy. Now I've turned into a city manager. With my platoon, we're doing things from trying to reestablish the power grid so they can have at least 6 hours of running power a day, or trying to figure out how to connect the people back to potable water, and also trying to teach a police force that are scared to be police how to actually do policing. None of which, infantry soldiers are trained for, coming out of Fort Benning, Georgia. So extremely out of my comfort zone. But, it was also the time that I discovered the power of the American soldier. The people who raised their hands to join come from different backgrounds. So inside of my platoon, I had a carpenter's son. Inside of my platoon, I had an actual electrician. And inside of my platoon, we had a couple former police officers. So it went from having this impossible task of, providing essential services for, a town when I'm just a 30-man rifle platoon, to actually showing progress, actually helping people, live their everyday lives, which, is all they really wanted to do. So I went from being extremely uncomfortable to being extremely gratified by the power that we as an American military are able to do in places like that. And also, it's my first true appreciation of the soldiers that you all and I have had the ability to lead. So.
Dr. Kemp, would you care to comment on that?
Sure. I will go back to when I was an ROTC cadet, and I was an MS3. And I had been a sergeant at Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and this assistant PMS came up to me, and in my second semester as MS3, they made me a cadet second lieutenant, a single round PIP, which was the highest rank you could achieve as a MS3 second semester, at least at Western Kentucky. And I remember he had known me before I joined the Army. He'd gone to our church and knew me, and so he came up and saw that I had this PIP on my shoulder. And, I kind of thought being an ROTC and going back to school after being an NCO was kind of a joke. Animal House had just come out, and so there were the Niedermeyers, and there were guys that were, the Special Forces guys, hut, 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 going down. And it was, I thought it was kind of childish, but, I was going to do it because it was a way of getting a commission and a job. And so Major Jim Love looked at me and said, something there, Cadet Kim? I'm really surprised they made you a cadet second lieutenant because I didn't think you cared about anything. And I will tell you that cut into me, and I think about that almost every day. That was 40 years ago. And I thought, I am never going to let a man ever look me in the eye and say you don't care about what you're doing. So whatever I do, I'm going to do it well, or I'm not going to do it. And so I just decided that day that if I'm going to be a husband, I'm going to be the best husband I possibly can. I don't always succeed, but I tell you, it drives me, and it burns in my stomach. Still makes me mad that a man could say that about me. And so that's when I was out of my comfort zone. I was not completely out of my comfort zone because I was just sliding along, and I made a decision that day, I am never going to slide along again. I'm going to do the best I can, and I'm going to do it well, and nobody ever say that to me again. And Major Wynn, who's one of my students, has heard this story because I tell this story to people about whatever you do, if it's going to be as a cadet, or if it's going to be as an NCO, or going to be as a dad or a mother, do it well and be proud of it and do it with integrity. Because integrity has to do with not just doing the right thing, it means being complete and being whole and having this completeness. And so if you're going to be complete and whole, it means you need to be dedicated and you need to do things right and do things because you care and people know you can care about it. So that's probably the one thing, and I think about that just about every day.
That's awesome. A lot of pre-command courses, they will talk about feedback is a gift.
Yeah. Well, I gave that same talk to the pre-command course this morning, if you're wondering.
Oh, there
So
you
the
go.
colonels and lieutenant colonels going in command heard that same story this morning at 6:30.
Cool. Yeah, and it's good to get that feedback sometimes, and you may not like it, but it allows you to be introspective, and maybe it's something you need to change. So I appreciate that story. Colonel Atkin, I'll go ahead and let you take a stab at this one.
Well, I know my fellow comrade from the 10th Mountain will appreciate this. I'm an armor officer, right? And I have been for about 25 years. I'm very proud of my branch, very, very proud of being able to close with and destroy the enemy, being part of the combat arm of decision. How many of you are planning to go armor over the next few years? Okay, a few. All right. Well, I had the opportunity to go to Maxwell Air Force Base for my command and staff college and spend some time with the Air Force. Yes, that put me out of my comfort zone too, but about halfway through the course, I received orders to go to the 10th Mountain Division. So I'm calling around going, I didn't know they had tanks in the 10th Mountain Division. When did that happen? So I show up at the 10th Mountain Division, and lo and behold, I'm assigned to the 2nd Infantry Brigade and go to the Reconnaissance Squadron. So here I am, I've spent the majority of my career riding around on tanks and enjoying it, and cannons, machine guns, we never worried about water and things like that. And my squadron commander at the time, a very unique individual, and he came in one morning and said, hey, we're going on a 25-mile road march. And I looked at him dead serious. I'm like, sir, the engines aren't even going to get warmed up in 25 miles. And he's like, what are you talking about? We're walking. And I was like, 25 miles? Why? So my experience was, as an armor officer, being exposed to light infantry for the first time. But I will tell you, on that march, as in much pain as I was not going to let the reputation of the armor branch down. And I said, nope, I'm going to keep on trucking. And that's what I did. And I actually came to enjoy foot marching, and went, lo and behold, 5 or 6 years later, when I'm a battalion commander, I'm doing the same things. And my armor officers ask me the very same questions. So I will tell you is don't become so stovepiped within your own branch, within your own profession or your own ideology. You have to be able to expand your mind and expand your profession and adapt and adjust to what's going on. So even though it was humorous and painful, it's a lesson I will never forget.
Ooh. Mr. Wilcox, I'll turn it over to you for this one.
Okay, my example, again, consistent with my career, is a little different from everybody else's. When I first arrived in Austria to U.S. diplomatic mission, within a week of getting there, I was told I need to start going to meetings at the Russian delegation to be the lead U.S. negotiator for a new agreement. That was a bit of a shock for me. First of all, not having been a negotiator. Second, I thought, well, that's the State Department does that stuff. And third, I was going to be working with a bunch of foreigners who were probably a lot better at this than I was. So it required a significant adjustment in kind of the thought process, I think, to go through. We talk about comfort zone. There's really 2 words there you need to consider. One, what does comfort mean for you? And 2, understand what your comfort zone is. And if you're not in this comfort zone, what is this other zone you've been thrown into? So the challenge is to try to understand, one, what is it that makes you uncomfortable about being in the situation? So I kind of figured that out for myself, which is, well, one, I haven't even moved into my apartment. I've got my family settled yet. And 2, I'm working with a bunch of foreigners. And 3, there's this one Russian who already knows who I am, which was a little discomforting to begin with as well. And then the second thing is to figure out, what is it that makes you uncomfortable there? What is it that makes you uncomfortable, and what are you going to do to fix that situation, to make it more comfortable for you? So you got to start figuring out, who can help me understand what this environment is? Who do I need to talk to, and what resources are available to help me be more comfortable in this zone? But at the end of the day, the key is keeping your eyes on the prize. Is always figure out, I might not be comfortable here, but what is it that I'm supposed to accomplish? What's the objective? And stay focused on that. And at the end of the day, things will work out. Sometimes the cavalry may come and save you, as was my case. I finally got a State Department person working with me. But sometimes they may not. So just understand where you're going, understand what's going on, understanding what you have to do to change to make yourself a little bit more comfortable in that awkward area.
It's a great comment, sir. And what I took out of that is initiative. You got to have the initiative. You have to go look for some of those answers. They may not be provided for you, and you can't always count on the cavalry. So that's great. I appreciate that, sir. Major Brown.
I've been down here trying to think of one that I can really exemplify, and I guess I entered the National Guard in 2007 and assumed command about a year later, and my command was a reforming, reorganizing company, and things were good at first. Had a great ceremony, got off to a good start, and the same week that I took command, I got notified we're going to deploy. That deployment came at a time where I could have gotten out, and I decided that I needed to stay in for the soldiers that were in my formation. I owed them the continuity of leadership, as opposed to, just cutting sling load and bailing on them and letting them deploy with whatever they ended up with. My deployment ended up taking some drastic turns. I had to piecemeal my company out. I ended up giving up about 60 of my 160 soldiers. And in return, the infantry battalion was so kind to give me the soldiers they didn't want to keep. Some were from headquarters, some were scouts, some were mortarmen, definitely all walks of life. And as we worked towards deployment, my company continued to grow into a mess of MOSs and backgrounds. It was a challenge, to say the least, but I think what got me through it was that I had a first sergeant he was an armor guy, I was a logistics officer, and by gosh, we were gonna take this company downrange and we were gonna succeed. We had a myriad of problems. We had NCOs who had never led female soldiers. We worked with an infantry battalion who tried to come up with all kinds of excuses as to how they needed to work with us, didn't have to work with us. So there was a lot of proving ourselves. And the thing that paid off the most was that we committed to the training and we showed up and we did it. And by the time we deployed, I think it's safe to say we outshined most of the other units. So we're all gonna face discrimination, misconceptions, preconceptions, whether it's your gender, your race, your religion, where you went to college, where you didn't go to college. And just remember that defines you if you let it. So the trust that you develop with your peers and with those NCO counterparts is more than likely gonna make or break you. And I think had I had a different individual by my side, I don't know that we would have been as successful. But together we were able to make something pretty good out of a rather rotten situation. So when the Army gives you missions, no really isn't an option. So our job is to go out there and find a way to accomplish that mission and to figure out what resources we need from our leaders in order to see that mission through, because the boss doesn't want you to come back and say, I can't do it. He'll find someone else to do it.
Cool, great comments. I think what I took away really is relationships for you were important. So working and not afraid to lean on your subordinates, because that's what they're there for. You don't have to have all the answers, but you've got people within your formation that do. And so I'll let Major Downs finish this roundup, so go ahead.
So to go back to Colonel Atkins' comment, that's why I became a pilot, so I didn't have to walk.
Why do you think I became an armor officer?
Yeah. But if you get assigned to the 82nd, they don't care about that either. They made the pilots do road marches too. And speaking of pushing down on your subordinates, so when I was in Afghanistan the first time, my medevac platoon got attached to a medevac platoon from the 101st. So at the site that we were headquartered out of, there was the 101st captain who was in charge, my captain who was number 2 in charge. I was, as a first lieutenant, number 3 in charge, and then the 101st had a second lieutenant. But we were farmed out to 4 different sites, and so we had a particular warrant officer, a Chief Warrant Officer 3, who had done something wrong, and normally my captain, who was his raider, would be the one that would counsel him. Well, he was out at a remote site, and the other senior captain was at a remote site, so my captain said, hey, you're the one in charge. It's your job to counsel him. And to put his personality in perspective, I believe the polite way we still say it is he was one of those individuals that was a leadership challenge. Complicated by the fact that he was a pilot and a warrant officer. If you haven't had that experience yet, you'll understand what I mean in a couple years. But so I, in due diligence, I filled out my counseling form. I'm sure they teach you still how to do that at West Point or RTC. You get the form, you fill out the stuff, and then you know what your plan of action is going to be. And I called the CW3 into the office, and I said, hey, I'm counseling you, you've done some things wrong, and he flips out. Not like violently, physically against me, but he goes berserk. He's like, hey, leadership didn't fail me. And it's like Dr. Phil. I don't know how else to explain it. And tell me, when you teach counseling at school, do you ever, when you practice counseling one another, do you ever have that happen where they just go off and yell and scream? And I was like, ooh, I'm not prepared for this. We never covered this in training. Nobody teaches you how to handle this type of individual. But it goes back to my leadership philosophy of, so I listened. I listened what he had to say, and I let him get everything out. And when I did, instead of trying to take control of the situation, when I let him get everything out, we were able to have a conversation. And that was also when my younger, early career, I realized that a counseling is not necessarily a one-way conversation. It's a discussion. It's a dialogue. After he got everything out, I crossed some things off. I was like, okay, hey, that was a misunderstanding. I'm going to cross that off, and we'll write in what the plan is. And so after we had that conversation, I went from having what I would consider a fairly negative opinion of this officer, that we came out with mutual trust and mutual understanding. And so to kind of highlight what I think everybody said is, the Army is a business of people. Yes, we have a wartime mission. We're supposed to, close in and kill the enemy, but ultimately we are made up of people who have to work with one another. And so understanding each other is probably the most important thing to be successful as a leader. And that was what I learned in a very difficult lesson that day.
Cool. I think those are great answers. And at this time, what I'd like to do is open it up to the floor. So if I can get my paddle folks. All right, paddle number 3.
All right. Good morning, ma'am. Good morning, gentlemen. My name is Cadet Lamb, and my question is specifically for Mr. Wilcox. Mr. Wilcox, could you describe to us your daily tasks as a foreign area officer?
Okay, great. I will certainly do that. Thank you for your question. My first assignment as a foreign area officer at the UCOM staff was basically working two things. One was formation of policy, the other was implementation of policy. So basically what I did on a daily basis, particularly when I was the division chief, was we had a specific set of issues that we were responsible for protecting the combatant commander's equities, protecting U.S. forces, making sure the policy that was made in Washington was not going to hurt us. And this was happening during, in fact, while a negotiation was going on to change a treaty. So on a daily basis, we were talking back and forth to the Joint Staff to provide them our combatant commanders' perspective on issues, so that would feed into negotiations that people from Washington would then be conducting somewhere else. Because of the time difference, I get calls at home at night, they say, we need a position from you now. And I'd say, okay, I'll give you an action officer level position, don't tell anybody I ever said this, and it would go into negotiations. The other part was implementation, where our job was to represent all of U.S. forces in Europe in terms of how do we execute certain treaties. And a lot of these treaties had to do with people inspecting U.S. military units, so we had a lot of equities there. So we'd work with them there. When I was in Vienna, it wasn't all just cocktail parties and coffee shops. There was there was actually a battle rhythm for the organization I was assigned to in Vienna. There was a series of meetings that would take every week, all of which had potential impacts on the U.S. military and U.S. foreign policy. And so the basic routine was read cable traffic, read message traffic every day, try to figure out what's going on, go to your meeting, engage international counterparts on whatever we had to do and try to get them to our position, take notes on the meeting, come back and write a cable that had to go out that night. So it was a lot of processing information, understanding U.S. policy, engaging with international counterparts, and for us it was military advisors. We were a very close-knit group. In fact, we had beer call every couple of weeks with everybody. And then get the word back to Washington so that people are going to make smart decisions back there on things that are going to affect the military. So that's basically, and yeah, there were cocktail parties at night too, but that wasn't what on. Even at cocktail parties, we worked, because you go to a party, not just to kind of hang out and have drinks, you go to a party with a specific agenda in mind. I need to talk to this person about this issue and make things happen.
Number 3.
Striberney, Bowling Green State University. My question is for Major Downs. Sir, I'll commission as an active duty Medical Service Corps officer and my husband as an active duty infantry officer. So I was wondering if you could speak on the difficulties surrounding getting stationed together and if you have any general advice for those couples who hope to both make Army careers.
Sure, and that's a great question, and that's certainly a challenge that my wife and I have faced, and as well as many dual military couples that we know. When you get an assignment, specifically in a dual military couple, you've got essentially 3 things you can ask for. You can ask for duty station of choice, you can ask for a specific job, or you can ask to be with your spouse. I know, and that seems like an odd thing, but oftentimes, especially when you've got 2 different branches, my wife and I are lucky that we're both Medical Service Corps and happen to have the same branch manager right now. But when you have 2 different branches, the infantry branch and the medical service branch have to agree on the duty station. So if what is the most important thing to you is staying together, you need to tell both of your branch managers, hey, the most important thing to us is to stay together, and then they will do their best to find a location that works for both of you. I have known couples where one of them really wanted a company command, and so they went out of the captain's career course and said, hey, I want a company command. And, medical service branch said, hey, I can only send you here for company command. And infantry branch is like, I don't have any spots there. And so that is things that you will have to decide along the path is. So my wife and I, we have said the most important thing for us is getting to the same place together. And the Army has done a good job of keeping our stuff together. We've been separated on a few of our deployments, but they have worked generally pretty well. So have that flexibility in mind, and hopefully you both have good branch managers, and they'll be willing to work with you.
Number 4.
Cadet, is it working? Cadet Lewis, LSU, Go Tigers. My question is on gender integration. The Army, I came in 10 years ago, and the Army today in terms of SHARP and EO is night and day. Of course, we still have a long way to go. But what is being done to ensure a professional integration of females into combat roles?
I assume that one was for me.
Would you like to take it?
First of all, go Tigers. That's my master's and alum from LSU. So cool. The Army is, the policy decision or the announcement by the Secretary of Defense happened, I think it was about 2 months ago. The planning process is ongoing, and what General Milley has directed is that leaders will be in place at the officer level prior to the arrival of junior enlisted soldiers to specific units. The standards will remain the same. They're putting in what they call high-demand physical tasks associated with each branch, and every soldier who enters a particular branch, whether it be AG, infantry, logistics, armor, will have to achieve the standards associated by those high-demand physical tasks. So say, for example, loading an M1 main gun round or carrying the base plate for a 60-millimeter mortar. Those will be added to the gates at basic training, both for males and females, as they transition through the course. Here in the next few months, the Army will also institute what they call an OPAT, an Occupational Physical Assessment Test, which is it's very similar to the test that most cadets take prior to either contract or entry into West Point. And every soldier entering the military, just like, will have to take that test, just as they would your ASVAB, the GT's test score. So we're establishing this baseline for every soldier. So, and the primary focus is to maintain combat readiness across the force. So each branch will be equal, and no differentiation between gender or anything. Everything is just focused on the skills and attributes required for a particular job. Hopefully that answers your question.
Well, just one, I'll add a clarification from the ROTC side for the Mission Set 17 class. There will be a commissioning requirement. So that will go out, and your cadre member have already working the OPAT piece with United States Army Cadet Command. And so we'll start implementing that over the summer. Okay.
Just a short addition on that. A lot of it comes down to leadership. You guys are going to enter the Army when this is already done. So don't get wrapped up around what it used to be, and enter the Army that is today. And be the leaders that lead this Army through this transition. And the tone that you set is going to make a difference. And you're not in college anymore when you get to the Army, so don't play college pranks, because those can get you into trouble. It's a profession, and be professionals, and I think the problems they'll show themselves, and we'll take care of them.
I'll caveat to that, and leadership matters, and active involved leaderships at every level is what is going to make this successful.
Cool. Let's see, who's next? Okay. Let's go in the center right here. Number one. Oh, you're faster, so okay, go ahead.
All right, sorry. Good morning, sirs. Good morning, ma'am. My name is Cadet Bennett out of Howard University. And my question is for Major Wim. What was your most valuable part of preparation as an ROTC cadet and as a George C. Marshall Award winner that helped prepare you for deployment as soon as you got to your first unit?
I think in my preparation, while being an ROTC cadet, was the cadre members that were there to help me. You know, once I was identified as being an infantry officer, I had great cadre members who were like, "Hey, you know that we're a nation at war, and when you leave here, you will be a platoon leader leading men into combat." So, you know, I already had a good relationship with my cadre members, but I took the initiative at that point, which I believe everyone here knows their branches and some possibly duty stations, correct? Right now, you know, get ahead of the learning curve and realize that where you're going to go and those type of mission sets, and then ask the question. You know, I'm a big person about just asking a question about what will make me successful in the next job or the job I'm currently in. So during that time, during my last year at Morgan State University, you know, I was involved in a lot of things, but most important and paramount in my mind was being prepared to be the best, you know, infantry platoon leader, best second lieutenant that I could be. So I will give that to everyone here is, you know, graduation from your respective colleges is extremely important, and you guys have worked hard 4 years for that. You know, think about your next mission, and that next mission is being commissioned officers, whatever branch that you have received, and then your soldiers require and need you to be as prepared as possible. So take that time to make sure you achieve that.
All right, let's go with paddle number 1.
Good morning, ma'am. Good morning, gentlemen. Cadet Beta from Lehigh University in Pennsylvania. Everyone has kind of discussed in their career paths going to these different institutions and getting an education. I was wondering if you have advice for taking advantage of those opportunities. Let's say you want to go to grad school. Let's say you want to go to the language center. What is your advice for taking advantage of those opportunities?
I'll let Mr. Wilcox, you've got some advanced schooling. I'll let you take that one if you don't mind.
Okay. I think the opportunities may be greater in the Army now than they were in the last century when I was going through this stuff. I was able to do a lot of this because of my specialty. But in terms of education, I personally would say take advantage of every opportunity that's put forward to you. I mean, and it ties back to this whole concept of lifelong learning that we talk about in the Army, which is really, really important. It's not just something we talk about because it sounds really good. But you need to look at where you want to go in the Army, and sometimes it's really tough when you're sitting now as a guy thinking, gosh, where am I going to be 10, 15 years from now? You have probably no clue. But you need to start making that plan. I think someone made that comment earlier about making a plan. And as you start making a plan, start looking at what are the things that I think I need to do to get there, and within my service, where the opportunity is going to come up to do it. And then the other part of the lifelong learning, it's not just all these schools that the Army sends you to or gives you the opportunity to go to, but it's also those things you can do outside of those schools. And that's just could be something as simple as just reading, doing a lot of professional reading. Don't let your schedule tie you up that much where you can't take a little bit of time to do professional reading. A lot of it for education, too, is keep up on what's going on in the world on a daily basis. Beyond the Kardashians, they're important, but beyond the Kardashians, it's good to keep up on what's going on there as well. So again, the basic thing I would say is understand where you want to go, kind of have a plan, and be talking to the people that are going to be helping you manage your career at your branch to see what's available, what's realistic, what's going to help you in your own personal development, but also help you in terms of what you're going to contribute to the Army.
I'm allowed to caveat on that. One of the extremely important things that, you know, just was stated is knowing the plan and knowing where you are in your career. And if you decide to make the Army, you know, a lifelong career, or if you decided that you wanted to save towards your current contract, you should understand where you are, because that is extremely important for things that you want to do. So having that idea, having that knowledge of where you are, what you have to do, and it's in regulation, and then there's opportunity for you to expand and broaden your career as an Army officer that's given to you by the Army. So I'll first say that. But two, something I always impress into my subordinate leaders is also realizing that your soldiers, the ones that you're gonna lead here, they have opportunities as well that sometimes aren't taken. We get wrapped around ourselves believing that our mission is so busy that we forget that we want to be able to professionally broaden our soldiers. So they have ability to earn their college credits. They have ability to increase their GT scores, have ability to do things that get them promoted, which is important to them because it provides additional money for their families. It provides additional opportunities for them. So knowing where you are is important, but impress that onto your soldiers as well. Find the information out for the different educational opportunities that they may have and encourage them to go and encourage them to be part of that. Because if they're encouraged and your soldiers enjoy coming to work, they're going to be greater soldiers for you.
Number 3.
Good morning, I'm Cadet Nailing from the University of Southern California, and General Perkins spoke with us about how it's more important what leaders do, not necessarily what leaders have or what they are. I think General Casey, who said that he had such a good relationship with his platoon sergeant, he's now the godfather of his daughter. With me, that really stuck with me. I was just wondering if you all, I'm sure you do, had some examples of things that you did for soldiers, maybe at the platoon level, that kind of resonated with them and were great for your leadership. Thank you.
So, like I said earlier, I was a company commander of 600 soldiers. And one of the things that I said, so we didn't have a wartime mission. Our mission was to take care of the doctors and nurses that took care of the families at Madigan. And the thing that I instilled in my organization is I told them that we are a customer service organization. Whatever our soldiers need is more important than what we need. And then as a commander, what was more important for my soldiers was more important than whatever I needed. And so anytime that, because I could afford in my organization, anytime one of my soldiers, my training NCO, my personnel NCO, anytime they had a family issue come up, I would let them take care of their family issue. Because I knew that when that issue came up, that's what they're focused on. They're worried about their family, taking care of their loved ones, making sure that they get the health care, the trip to the hospital that they need. And if I don't let them take care of that, they're going to be thinking about that the rest of the day. And when I showed that I cared for them and that I allowed them to take care of their situation, when they got back to work, they were more focused, they worked harder, and they worked longer because they knew that they had to take care of me then. And so that's what I would say is if you take care of your soldiers, if you show them that they care, that you care about them, they will return that 100-fold and wake up early and stay late and bust their tails for you because they know that you're doing the same thing for them.
I would like to caveat at least a little bit on that. Taking care of soldiers involves more than allowing them time to take care of families. Yes, that is an important aspect of what they do, and of you as a leader giving them the opportunity to do so. But I can also tell you that as a leader, right, you have to maintain mission readiness. And it is your job to train them, and it is your job to prepare them for, for combat, whether you're an infantry officer or a logistics officer, an aviator, whatever. It is your job is to make sure that they are ready to execute the mission. And yes, giving them the opportunity to take care of family issues before, or family challenges before they become major problems is an important aspect of it. But sometimes you have to make the tough call. And don't pass that decision on to your superior or to your other commanders unless you have all the information and facts. So I will give you an example. If you are deployed, if you have the if you have a soldier whose wife is about to give birth or whatever, you have to make the decision is, can I balance allowing the soldier to return home to be with his family against mission accomplishments? And I'm not saying the answer is yes, and I'm not saying the answer is no, but what I am telling you is that you as the commander, you as the leader, have to make tough, hard decisions. And you learn that through experience, you learn that through training, you learn that through interaction with your commanders. And yes, it may not always be popular, okay? But the last time I checked is you are not elected to be an officer in the United States Army. Remember that.
Cool. Sure.
If I can, I'll give you something a bit more proactive that you could do. You'll spend 80% of your time with the 20% that's a problem. And the question is, how do you make that 20% of the time with the 80% and make it quality and do a really good job? And so I found one of the things that I did as a company commander, and I started as a lieutenant, is I would find somebody I thought was doing a particularly great job that was the unsung hero. And I wrote letters to their mothers. Quietly, but I'd write a letter, I want you to know that your son or daughter is doing an absolutely superb job, and you should be proud of what they're doing because they're really serving the country. And you've never gotten this before, but they're really wonderful, and they're doing a great job. I had an officer that came here to CGSC about 10 years ago, and he'd been an NCO in my company when I was a company commander. And he told me when he came to my house one night, he said, when my mother died, that letter was on her bureau that you wrote that said something about me. And I didn't know you'd written that letter till I went home well after I'd not known you. So you can make a difference. Sometimes just going and encouraging somebody and make a conscious effort to say, look, this person really is doing a great job. I need to find some way to say, look, you're doing well. You're really doing a great job, and I appreciate your service. And do it in a nice, quiet, unassuming way, and you'll be amazed at the impact you could have on a person's life. And an officer, that if you've been enlisted before, a lieutenant or a captain is like a really important person. And you may not see that today, but they're going to remember what you say, and they'll remember that for a long time. And so you can make a conscious effort to make what you say make an impact for a long time. And that's how you can do what General Casey did with his NCO, and General Casey established that relationship, where that relationship helps to engender that person and be more than what they thought they could be, to be all that they can be.
All right, we have time for one more question. All right, number 2.
Good morning. My name is Cadet Shanita Bailey from the Virginia State University. My question is directed at Major Brown. In reference, I know you spoke of being prior National Guard officer. I am prior enlisted in active duty, and I will be going back to active duty as an officer. However, many of my peers were not assessed as active duty, and sometimes that mentality of, well, I'm not going to active duty, I'm going to be Guard or Reserve, so I don't have to, know this, or I don't have to put as much emphasis on that, or they don't feel as though their job is going to be just as important as a leader as those going directly to active duty. What words can you give for me to take back to my cadets and to share with others to be able to influence them and say, hey, you're just as important, or what your job is in the Guard and Reserve is just as important? Because to me, there's only one Army standard, but how can I relate that from your experience?
Well, I know that a major doesn't hold a lot of weight in most circles, but they're wrong. That's what you can start with. When we go downrange, I deployed with an active duty unit out of Fort Carson. I deployed with a National Guard unit out of Texas. It was a hell of a lot easier to deploy on active duty. The National Guard deployment, we took 18 months to ramp up and prepare, and that's 18 months of soldiers having to drive across the state to drill, more than they're used to, dealing with them getting to drill as is their part-time job. It doesn't pay their bill the rest of the month. So there's a lot of juggling, but the National Guard I found, and I come from a family that has a lot of National Guard heritage. My dad retired from the Guard. The soldiers in the Guard and Reserve offer, just like Major Wynn said earlier, every one of them has another job. He might be an 11 Bravo today, he's a policeman during the week. They bring so many abilities to the table. They're a different organization. I found that the family structure of it is so much closer. I'm in the Texas Guard, which is one of the larger forces, and it's about 20,000 if you include the airmen. And it's the biggest. Some states it's 3,000 or 4,000, and that's your whole Guard. So when you say you go in there, your career starts as a cadet or as a brand new lieutenant, and you will work with those same individuals for your entire career. So, mistakes early on can come with you for a long ways. But so much of our military strength resides in the reserve components. Combat arms is in the National Guard, but the Army Reserves has a breadth of expertise and a wide-ranging mission across the Army that to discount any one of the services is foolish. And holding on to those folks and networking, because you never know when you're gonna end up downrange and that National Guard lieutenant or Army Reserve captain's gonna walk up to you and you can't tell in their uniform down there, it all says US Army. So train with them as they're your peers. Many of you are gonna get to your OBC and see that. It's a mix. Everyone goes to the same OBC, thankfully. And incorporate and integrate now. It's the Army that we're gonna fight with in the future, and the sooner we make the most of it, the better we're gonna be.
Go ahead.
One real quick thing to add to that is the important thing they need to know is they are our message to the rest of our country. Those of us that live in the active duty military, I live on a military base, I don't see the civilian population. They are going to be our representation in those small cities, in those small towns all across this country where the active duty personnel don't have an influence unless that's where we're from. So I think it's more important that they be the subject matter expert and they represent the professional identity of the Army because they are the ones that are going to be sharing their experiences and their perspective of the military to the rest of the population to get that public support.
Cool. Well, I want to thank the panel of leaders that we've had here today for taking the time out of your busy schedules to come out and share your thoughts as former George C. Marshall winners, but as current leaders in our Army. So thank you very much. Let's give them a big round of applause, please.
Okay, on behalf of Major General Combs, the Commanding General for Cadet Command, I'd like to present you all with a coin. And to all of the cadets out there, just think, 10 years from now, you could be on this panel. Who? You got something to look forward to. Or 30 or 40. Thank you so much. Soldier never stops.
All right, everybody, I want everybody to get their schedules out real quick. We're going to make a slight change. Okay, on this afternoon's reflection time, I want you to extend that out to 16:15. To 16:15. Once that's over, get that back down here as quickly as you can. Don't be goofing off, because we're going to have some quick closing remarks and then get you to chow. Okay? All right. Now, other things that we need to tell you. Eisenhower people, those going to Eisenhower for their classrooms, do not pick up these guys' lunch. Okay? So I don't want to have to shuttle lunches back over to this building. Just saying. Also, if there's a specialty lunch, if it's a specially marked box, okay, don't pick that particular lunch up unless you're the one that asked for it, okay? If you didn't ask for it, take a normal lunch. Let's see. Those in this building here, that were in room 1125, your room has been changed. You are now in room 1315, so write that down, 1315. So if you're 1125, you're now in 1315. All right, and that is the only thing else I've got to add here. So here's what I want to do first. So I want to go ahead and pull the Eisenhower people out of here first. So Eisenhower. Okay, we've got one other thing. Hang on, hold tight. One other thing.
Should only take about 15 to 45 minutes. Hey, I just wanted to point out, if you're looking at the schedule, there's about a half hour in between your leadership from now into your leadership engagement, and that's to give you time to take a restroom break and grab your box and get there. But also between the leadership, the round table and your reflection time, again, there's about a half hour built in there. Please take advantage of that. Get up, stretch, because you're going to be in the classrooms a very long time. I think I caught someone sleeping earlier, but just make sure you get up and stretch, get something to drink. The cadet reflection time is really important, so I'm really looking forward to your feedback on that. That's all I had, sir.